Okay, so I started the recording. Nobody gets to see what just happened. Okay, so you specifically want to learn Nature's Prophet, right? That's what you.
Yes,
Okay.
specifically. I've been toying with Enigma, but Nature's Prophet's the one I really want to learn. I find I just really like the feeling of having that global presence. I play a bit of Ember Spirit, a lot of Storm, so
Yeah, these heroes are Enigma's a really good hero, but he's like a lot different from the global heroes. Like these global heroes basically have this there's a lot of jobs to be done in Dota. There's like ganking, team fighting, all of these things, and basically positioning on the map really matters. And these global heroes can just basically ignore that factor, which is kind of broken. But the thing is, a lot of these other heroes in Dota like have specific strengths that make up for the fact that they can't do that. So yeah, definitely like a good group of heroes to learn. The way that I would describe Nature's Prophet is no, the sound is really loud in the game. Okay, I'll turn it down a little bit. Turn it to zero, whatever. This hero I would consider. So you play him on offlane, right? Or do you play him five or what role?
I would typically play him in an offlane role. Yeah.
Okay, so I think with every role he's relatively the same, and like your role in the game is basically to just supplement your team in whatever they're doing. So other than the fact that he's really strong in the laning phase, this hero can actually feel like total dog shit if your team isn't having a good game. And you can enable your team, like you can help them with ganks, you can set up stuff, you can push towers, and you can be the reason that they're ahead. I'm definitely not saying that he's a hero that like can't do that. It's just that if your team is really far behind, the hero can feel extremely weak, and that's definitely just something that like when you're practicing you have to keep in mind, just because like you might have a really rough game and it actually could possibly just be because the hero's a supplementary hero and he feels really useless despite being a obviously broken hero. He feels really useless if your team isn't strong, because if you're just TPing into like a losing fight, well then you're just feeding like an extra kill basically. That's like one thing that I think is really important for learning this hero. But do you have any specific replay that you would want to go over of Nature's Prophet?
So what I was thinking was actually, and you can tell me that if this holds water. If not, I can just pull one up. But I was thinking it might make more sense to analyze a couple of the facets of a higher level replay,
Sure, yeah, we
and
could do that.
yeah, and then we can break that down, see what they're doing, and then
I think one of the best Nature's Prophets that plays offlane right now is Tavo. And
I'm holding my breath for Bulldog.
yeah, well, I hope he comes. Man, that guy's awesome. I hope he comes back to competitive. He's got huge balls when he plays. It's always fun to watch. He's also like legitimately the funniest guy on Twitch. Period. I actually like can't believe when I watch his stream how much funny shit he says just naturally. He's just like a funny guy. I love Bulldog too. So let's see, Pain Gaming. So they probably pick Nature's Prophet, and maybe I could go to the. I'm hoping that I get lucky and I can just find one quickly because I know they. Yeah, okay. So here. So I'm assuming it's Tavo on Nature's Prophet. What? Oh, okay. That was Okay. Well, I'm gonna go to Dota Buff then. Check out Dota Buff. Pain Gaming. Um, it's definitely really good to look at pro replays if you feel like you can if you feel like you can naturally like understand what they're doing. It's definitely good to look at pro replays, but a lot of the time you can end up looking at pro replays and it just kind of looks like they're getting lucky and doing everything right, and you don't really know why. And I mean that for me too, like because these are like, tier 1 players, tier 1 teams, so they have all of they've like discussed everything, they practice everything, every single thing they do is intentional. And you don't really
And
necessarily understand why. So it's like it's really good to like formulate an opinion. This is what Loomden actually, he's been coaching my team, but he's super strict on this. Like he thinks you should formulate an opinion and then look at your own replays and basically see what the difference is between that opinion and how you're playing. So this is a loss, but probably still a good. I mean, still a decent replay. I think Pain Gaming has lost a decent amount because, well, it was the international, so
Username checks out.
Yeah. It really does. Okay. Sorry, what were you saying? I kind of rambled on there.
Right, yeah, I was going to say one other big thing that changes as you get into higher MMR is that your decision making is informed by the expected decisions that your opponents are going to make.
That is true. That is 100% true. Um, however, I would say that like if you take a lot of the principles that you can learn from a lot of these like top tier games and you implement them in the lower rated games, despite people probably not reacting in the way that you would expect, you'll still have like a higher. You'll still increase your probability to win, just not by as much as if you were right about your opponents doing certain things. You know what I mean? Like if you make space for your team, and they like people will take space from they will take space from you, but they won't take as much as like a really good team would because they don't know that they can because they're just not as skilled. So I do think that it's still really worthwhile to. Loomden always tells me how like there's different groups of heroes that you should win with in the different brackets, but I'm pretty sure that the all of the principles are still really important, even between the brackets. It's just that maybe you won't be able to impact your game as much if that makes sense. Like if you do everything right in like a really low rated game, you might actually have a higher chance of winning. You probably have a higher chance of winning if that was a high rated game if you did everything right because people would be able to take the space. Okay, so we don't need to look at the draft. I think this was in TI. Yeah, this was definitely in TI. Probably the group stages or something like that. But oh, it was TI. It's right up there. So let's see. Are you still there?
Yes, I am still here.
Okay, my bad, my bad. Okay,
Listening with rapt attention.
Nice. So at the start with Nature's Prophet, do you want me to just like go over the replay and kind of explain what I think he's doing, and if you have like any questions, you can.
So actually, I'm gonna try where I can to put forward a hypothesis because
okay, yeah,
I think that's
that
a
sounds
pretty good
interesting.
idea as a student. Like
Yeah.
just
That's a really good idea. Okay, so
straightforward. I'm gonna explain what I can of what he's doing. First of all, Blightstone starting item. I'm guessing what he's trying to do here is just to be able to solidly harass. He's expecting a dual lane, presumably, because you wouldn't be able to harass very well against like a tri-lane or something. Also, I noticed he spawned the Triensin Fountain just for the free mana, and now he's preparing to scout with them. There's not really an option other than going for bounties at this point in the meta, so it makes a lot of sense to be scouting that area.
For the Blightstone, what I would say is also this is an item that you would be a lot more likely to pick up when you're in a dual lane as well, because the person that you're dual laning with can benefit from the minus armor as well. So it's a little more efficient because of that. And then also if you are solo laning as a Nature's Prophet or you have a roamer, and this is not a hero that's very likely to roam, you might not want the Blightstone because it's actually very dangerous to have this low of stats. And he could also have like boots or a windlace or something like that would protect him more if he was going to be in more of a dangerous scenario. But he doesn't consider himself to be in any danger because in the early game, this is probably realistically the strongest hero on this team, maybe barring the Undying. But Dark Willow's like super strong, so I think that's another reason. Like you wouldn't see him go this Blightstone if he has like an Earthshaker or something like that might roam mid, just because it's dangerous if the Earthshaker ever leaves, if that makes any sense. But yeah, you're totally right about he wouldn't do this if he wasn't against a dual lane either, because it's suicidal for the same for the same reasons. And the Treants, yeah, free mana, scouting, preparing for the bounties, basically. Anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So
one thing I'm noticing is he's using them to get the high ground vision instead of his hero, just because that's a less safe area, I suppose.
Yeah. That's definitely one thing that you want to consider anytime you're playing a summon hero. Most of the summon heroes in Dota, you said you were playing Enigma as well. Most of the summon heroes in Dota lack mobility, and that's just because their summons can be used if you micro them well enough to essentially give you to allow you to get the same information while having better positioning than those heroes that would need to. For instance, if you have like a Queen of Pain, you can just stand on the high ground and then you can blink away. But this hero can't do that. So like a huge consideration, you want to make literally all game. Like if you're farming a camp, if you are sitting in lane, if you're doing absolutely anything in the game, you always want to consider, can you get vision with your summons? Can you stand farther away from like a ramp or a choke point or anywhere where you could get killed, and basically like abuse those summons as much as you can, because that's their strength. And if you're not abusing that, you're basically you'd rather be playing a hero that has the mobility but doesn't have the summons. So yeah, that's definitely like a really important note, because that's not just a, you know, an early game or high ground thing. That goes for like farming jungle camps. If you're sieging a tower, you always want to be using those summons and basically taking the weaknesses of the hero and positioning the hero better, but then using the strengths to get the same information that you would be able to get as a higher mobility hero or like a tankier hero or something like that.
Right, yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. Pretty in line with what I think about it as well.
That was an unfortunate first blood. That was a solo Tiny killing a Willow. My god. I don't think I saw this game, but that was very unfortunate. So, using the treants to constantly harass. Pretty typical stuff in the lane. How do you micro, by the way? What's your hotkey setup like?
So first of all, I use all of the numbered keys for micro. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Control groups.
I use space to select my hero just because I find it lets me get like Helm of the Dominator and Necronomicon on like the same hero if the situation calls for it.
Yeah.
I do have tab for tabbing between units. I have unified control commands for units.
Oh, that shit's so good for Nature Prophet. I do not have to
select all other units and hero though, because I can just use the unified control command and then immediately select my hero with space.
Okay, yeah, that is true. Although I do find it kind of hard to like body block with treants with the unified unit orders.
Well, I find I just control click on the enemy hero and then control only my units and then just body block with them.
So you basically like deselect your hero or box select your units.
No, I just control click on the enemy hero to chase them, and then I select my units with the hotkey for them, and then I just.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that works as long as it's comfortable. I think paying attention to like his camera movement right now is super important as well. Maybe
it's
not
really centralized.
It's a little centralized, but you can see that he keeps moving the camera so that his hero is like directly at the bottom. And that's just because, like, once again, that kind of goes back to playing one of these very low mobility, squishy, but has summons heroes. And I mean, just in general in the laning phase, it's really important to like not waste your camera in an area. Like he knows that down at the bottom of the screen, like past this UI section here, like there's nothing of value to see, right? But up here he could potentially see like a hero TPing in. Over here he could see like a rotation from somebody, and then also he's standing to the left. He's standing like as far away, kind of between the two dangerous areas, you know, as far away from both of them without being closer to either. Obviously in this game it's like nobody's really ganking him because the pressure is on the other lanes, but you can still see that he has like that natural impulse, just because there are probably a lot of games where it actually, oh god damn it. Let me tell him. I swear to God, every single time. Every single time. It's always Alex. It's always Alex. He's my teammate. Okay, so now he's playing in the trees, which is kind of insane. But like I said, the pressure is really on the bottom lane, so it's not that big of a deal in this game. I just think it's worth noting because on this hero, like if you step out of position for a second, and I'm sure you felt this, you just get fucking annihilated.
Yeah, it's the same concept you talked about with your Offlane Puck series way back in Game Leap. I remember in that particular replay you were doing, you were up against like a Shadow Shaman and then 2 others, so it was a kill lane. So you had to stand very far away from the the danger zones. Standing
away from the danger zones, and this is actually something that I've learned recently, like keeping your camera focused on the danger zones. Obviously, in a game, you know, depending on the player, like if you watch Arteezy, he's got his camera like almost perfectly on the danger zones at all points. Like you can see that Tavo's moving his camera to like the area where the enemy hero is. Obviously, he's also cutting the creeps and stuff like that. But you might see somebody like Tavo screw this up and keep his camera centralized for a little bit, but that's because he's actually misplaying. Like he would like to keep his camera more on where the danger zones are. It's just that he's not quite at like Arteezy's level or something when it comes to camera control. Arteezy probably has the best camera control in Dota. So it's really important, and you can slip up, and it's like it's okay because really it depends on your MMR, but a lot of the time you won't get punished as long as your movements in general, camera movements around the map, your positioning, as long as that is like pretty good, you'll probably be better than 90% of people in 90% of brackets, because really it gets like people get exponentially better at this as you go up the tiers, and then you have these tier 1 pros that are like so much better than I am, for example, at this, like so much better, and it's so basically you can get away with like not having your camera positioning perfectly. Like Tavo, obviously he's playing at TI, and you can see now his camera's in a really good position. His positioning is a little bit far to the right, I'd say, there, because he could actually have Tiny come in and one hit him, because Tiny isn't showing on the map. But it's like a few seconds isn't that big of a deal. Maybe 5 seconds is a big deal. Maybe 7 seconds is like a really big deal. You know what I mean? So it's just a matter of improving it. That's all. It's just a matter of like focusing on it and improving it, and then eventually like you just will find yourself not dying in the laning phase anymore. So you can see in this scenario, like, they rotated and stuff, but because his positioning is good, because his camera movement is good, it just looks like he narrowly avoids it. But really, like, if his camera movement was shitty, or maybe if I'm playing this, I would actually die there, because maybe I wouldn't see that rotation until it's a little bit too late, where oh my god, did I just speak too soon? I did. Well, that's definitely a mistake. He doesn't see the storm. He's positioning too far to the right when he knows that he just got ganked. He already did his job, which is to secure the tower, and he already pushed in the lane too, and it was coming into the tower. So really, there's no point for him to be standing there at all, other than for kills, which is like a terrible reason. They lost this replay, so I'm sure there will actually be more criticisms than there are good things, but
praises.
Yeah, praises. So it's like, sorry, I was watching this happening, but this is actually an interesting.
I'm noticing here is he is a squishy summon hero, but due to the summons, he can take a lot of unsafe farm in a similar manner to a mobile hero. So now he's moving to the unsafe part of the map, I'm noticing. Yeah, and a big reason that he did that is because he had already done his job, which is to take this tower, and he forced rotation stop in an ideal scenario. And the reason that I'm criticizing Tavo is because it's become really clear to me that with Lumden recently coaching my team, that it's actually really easy to look at any replay and see a lot of mistakes. I've talked about this on the channel too, but it's like, it would actually be useful for Tavo to sit down with anybody and just go over these mistakes, because it's very clear logically that in this scenario where he was here and he died, he had already done his job. He got the tower, he forced rotations, and yet he went back in for no reason other than kills. Imagine if he doesn't do that, the whole enemy team comes top, and then he just goes bot and does this without dying. Like, that's clearly a better play. But with that being said, the idea of what he's doing is really, really good. Like you said, he's going to take the unsafe farm because he already did his job top. Unfortunately, he died doing it, which is a mistake. But in Dota, it's not just like something is bad or something is good. What he did was good. It's just not as good as it could have been. Like, he could have done this exact thing that he did up here, which is force the entire team to rotate top. Storm is top. We can see him on the minimap. Tiny TP'd in. Shen TP'd in. They got the tower anyway, which is a huge triumph, especially considering they have the mid tower as well. So now he goes bot to the unsafe area because he knows that basically the most important thing about this is that the reason that he's going to take this unsafe farm is because this tower and this tower is dead. So it's really good for him to go down here and have the anti-mage go take top, because top is actually way safer now due to like which towers have fallen. So that's like a really important concept of trying to essentially like rotate the lanes in a way that like you have a carry that or a hero that needs to catch up, allow them to actually catch up. But then there's also kind of this concept of like
the laning stage kind of ends when somebody makes a rotation like Tavo just made, and it's unfortunate he doesn't get a kill, but it actually doesn't even matter, because now what happens is he's positioning himself down here in the bot lane. Probably the supports will come down here and position with him as well, and then Anti-Mage will have space top, and it kind of ends the laning phase by making like a lane rotation. And a lot of the time when you make a lane rotation, in order to end the laning phase, you want to get a kill first, just because that results in you getting an objective or pressuring an objective, and then the enemy team has to respond to it, and then in that response you get more information, you can kill them, or you can make another rotation, and then there's basically this like this domino effect where you made the first move, so constantly the enemy team has to respond to you, and you can take advantage of that response. And
in classical chess terms, you have the tempo at that point.
Exactly. That's the actual metaphor or analogy that Lumden uses to like teach us when he coaches us as a team. He's like, okay, you guys need to try to get that kind of like first move advantage. You need to get you need to control the tempo, basically. And that's like kind of what he's trying to do. It's really unfortunate, like I said, that he died and then he didn't get a kill in making these rotations. A better player would. Like if this is maybe Admiral Bulldog in his prime, maybe he would actually avoid that kill top, and then he would... It's interesting to me that he TPs back top, actually, though. So he TPs back top, Anti-Mage farms bot. This kind of seems a little insane to me. I mean, they did end up losing this game, because this is the dead lane, so in order to have Anti-Mage actually free farm down here, they have to have somebody sitting behind him, as opposed to, like, if he just goes top, he could probably just farm. But then again, this team also...
But I'm also looking at a bottom. They have Windranger and Wraith King positioned down there, and that's a lot of farm they have tied up down there.
You mean the Windranger and Wraith King, or...
Wraith King, yeah. It feels like maybe they're more confident with a more mobile Anti-Mage down there. But that seems really weird.
Maybe. I definitely think... Okay, it's... Maybe they anticipated that the top lane was going to become dead, which is kind of true, given like what's happening. Like Storm and Tiny are very strong, and they're both positioning up here. So I guess it's kind of true. And then there's also the fact that this team is just going to have different principles that they consider to be important than ones that I do. You know what I mean? So it's actually just possible.
Also, the regions matter as well. Virtus Pro's Russian, and that's a very different style of Dota than North American from South American like Pain.
Yeah, for sure. And then also, like, I know there are certain regions that will like value certain jungles over other jungles. Like Pain might be valuing the Dire jungle because they have an Ursa and they want to control this area so that the Ursa could take Roche at some point. Like, that makes a lot of sense to me. It just depends on how they really want to play the draft. But I've learned that it's very hard to analyze strategically like a tier 1 team's gameplay, just because there's so much that they could have learned in scrims and all of their practice that it's really hard to, like, it's almost like a psychological thing that you need to delve into. Like, what have they learned in the... Because every single thing in this game that they're doing is very likely to be premeditated. So he's ganking the Centaur creep. Okay. Oh, so securing the bounties, of course. They're securing the bounties. So they know that the bot lane is... Actually, what VP is doing here is really good. They just got 3 bounties. Well, they killed the Anti-Mage, which is legit, but... Anyway, that has nothing to do with Nature's Prophet. Okay, so this is kind of becoming more like team stuff, and fighting on Nature's Prophet. Fighting with the Tombstone, pretty legit. Chasing into the shrine. Send him back. Okay. God, this is total chaos. Okay, so anyway, do you wanna continue to kind of like, you can hypothesize and I'll chime in whenever I...
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot that we just saw. Like, I actually couldn't even think. they're just fighting. They're just fighting nonstop, which is making space for the Anti-Mage. Like, that's probably the purpose here, is that they're fighting and making space for the Anti-Mage against Storm. Like that.
So he's totally out of lane now, I guess, because like naturally there's the entire enemy team in the Dire jungle right now. I wouldn't want to be in lane either.
Yeah. This what he's doing right now is like the same thing as what we saw at the start, where he's sending the single treant and the lowest HP treant because he's being efficient, and he's going to sit it probably right here, I imagine. Just to give him vision. Once again, it's this idea of his shitty mobility, and his positioning is also really important. You can see that if he were to just go and farm this camp, and not give a shit about mobility or positioning or anything like that, he might actually be standing here or something like that. You can see my mouse, right? On Discord? Okay. Yeah, he might be standing here or something because, like, well, you're just farming, right? So you want to be close because the projectile has less time to travel or something like that, or you just don't care. But he's positioning over here because he knows he can hit from over there, and if he sees enemies in this area and he's standing over here, he has a lot more time to react, and he has the high ground to run up.
There's a lot of options you can do there. Yeah, you can juke into the trees to the left. You can go down. You can actually just go onto the high ground and TP. You can stand behind that tree immediately above him. There's a lot of stuff he can do here.
Yep, exactly. So that's basically, this is one of the most important offlane concepts, actually, and it's this idea that your job, a lot of the time, and a lot of the time it'll be in the offlane, but it doesn't really matter that much what lane it is. It just depends on the situation in the game, but in the current meta, it's usually the offlane. Most of the time, what your job is in the game is to, and this gets you really farmed as well, is to push in this lane, and you can see that since this has a double range creep, this was pushing, so his job is already done. He doesn't need to go hit the creeps, because if he hits those creeps, he's presenting the enemy team with the information that he's top, and the more seconds that you spend on a creep wave, the more time the enemy team will be thinking about ganking you. So he doesn't want to be there, and he probably doesn't want to be here either, because this is like a way more dangerous area to farm, because the enemy team can just loop around here and kill you, and there's very few options. But over here, you're
honestly, Storm Spirit could be like TPing to the shrine, and he could just be farming that double camp just because they want to get that T1 top.
Yeah,
and, like,
exactly.
Even though they didn't know he was there, he's just dead.
Right. So this is a very common offlane play because of that, because this is close to the shrine, and it goes for both sides. Basically, you sit on the high ground here, farm this camp, wait for this lane to push back into you, because the enemy team, if they're not dumb, they'll push it. They're not going to just allow a tower to get hit, because the worst part about a tower getting hit is not that it takes damage, it's that it reveals the information that the enemy team is not top. So your team will naturally react and know that they have to be somewhere else. So it's really bad for the enemy team to just leave this lane pushed in. Plus, if you get any team fight that is a success, you just take the tower or something like that. So somebody will guaranteed push that out. So all you need to do as an offlaner, all your job needs to be, if you're in one of these kind of passive farming games, is you push this lane in such that it is pushing into them, and you know it will eventually hit their tower. Once that is done, you fuck off, because doing anything else in that lane is revealing information about you, and you don't want to do that. And then you farm this camp on the high ground, and the only time you go over to this camp and this camp is when the enemy team reveals information that it's not likely that they're going to kill you here. So if you see the tinier storm somewhere else, and then the Wraith King passively pushing this out, you might take a risk and say, okay, maybe storm probably isn't here, because if the Wraith King is passively pushing this out, probably they just want to deal with this lane, and then I can go. You probably don't go when the Wraith King is there, because, well, he could go on you. But if the Wraith King keeps pushing up, it's probably that he's got people behind him or something like that, or you could potentially gank him. So it's actually not that big of a deal if he stays here, because he's presenting you with a kill, essentially. So all you basically need to do, push this lane in so that's pushing to the tower, farm these camps, farm this one on the high ground with no information, farm these two when you have information that you're going to be safe. Keep doing that rotation. If the enemy team pushes into you and this Wraith King keeps pushing up, it probably means people are behind him, and that's when you move to these camps. And then basically it's rinse and repeat. You might decide to defend the tower if the whole enemy team comes up here, and if they don't come up here together, you just push this lane in again, and then take this camp, and then once information is presented to you, you take these two camps, and you can just do this rotation, and eventually you'll just, if the enemy team sucks, you'll just get a lead doing this, and you'll eventually win, because they won't be able to 5-man into you. It's really stupid, but actually doing just this rotation will win you a lot of games, especially in pubs, because people are just kind of out of their mind. And this guy might if this is a pub, this guy might just push up and get himself fucking killed alone. But if you go and push this lane after it's already been pushed in, after you've already done your job, then potentially you could be making the mistake that this guy might make, which is to push in, give them information that you shouldn't when you don't have information on the map that you're not going to die. You die, they push in this tower, and then all of a sudden you can go up and do your job, but you've lost a lot of gold, you've lost a lot of momentum, and you've potentially presented them with an opportunity to push your tower. So basically, this is a really important rotation for offlaners, and this is something that people do a lot on like Enchantress, on Weaver, on not so much on Tiny right now, but on like almost every offlaner people do this. And Nature's Prophet,
Enigma even.
yeah, Enigma, exactly. Enigma that's like Enigma's primary rotation. And the great thing about these summon heroes is you don't even need to have information to farm these camps actually, or to push out the lane, because you can do it with the summons. Like, it's actually broken.
And you can especially time it really well with this rotation. You can farm that large camp, wait for the summons to have very little time left, and then you send them into the camps, and then, well, the enemy doesn't have enough time to kill them.
Yeah, yeah. So. I mean, that's like super efficient if you can do that. That's super duper efficient, because then they're literally getting nothing from the summons, which is one of the benefits of the enemy team playing against like a summon hero. But you can see that he's farming this camp with the summons. He does have the Dark Willow here, so he's a little safer. But you can see he's actually being very, very safe. He's even TPing out to over here, so he's doing this rotation because. Nice. I'm actually glad that I said that because he's doing this, because you see that the Wraith King is continuously pushing up, so he's kind of scared that somebody's in the area, and the Chen kind of is. It's not that big of a fear, but Ramses is playing with such huge balls, and it's probably because he's just a Wraith King, and he knows that if the enemy team goes on him, he'll just resurrect and Storm TP's in. But Tavo is not. He's playing it safe still. He even TP's over to this camp, which is, and then he used the summons to kill this one, so this one's gone. So it's actually interesting that he did that rotation, because I'm learning about this stuff right now. Well, I've been learning it, kind of analyzing pro replays and stuff, and going over them with Lumden, because I'm trying to go pro again, and this is something that maybe I would do in the past, but it's actually kind of recent, like this sort of thinking about Dota.
And also, it's very hard to justify doing it on your own, I found.
It is, yeah, it definitely is. If you just sit and passively play Dota nonstop and you're just doing shit on your own, it is kind of like, it's hard to think about this sort of stuff. I definitely think there's a lot of value in like getting coached, watching like whatever you can to gather the information, you know, because this sort of stuff, the only reason that people have these like, this is a rotation to do as an offlaner, the only reason that I know this is because that is something that has circulated the pro scene, and it's trickled down essentially. You know what I mean? Like,
right, yeah.
the fact that information is shared in Dota between players, between teams, and then through streams, and Dota has gone so complicated because of this, because the community shares everything. I mean, for God's sake,
it's essentially a human open AI neural network.
Exactly. Like, I mean, at a certain point, like, people didn't even stack. People didn't even jungle, for God's sakes. Like, somebody invented jungling. Can you believe that? That's unreal. But yeah, and this is just the next level of that, is like these rotations. This is what offlaners do. This is a really good rotation. And obviously, when the patch changes, it's probably going to change. But this is something that has certainly circulated. And if you do this in your pubs as Nature's Prophet, you'll find yourself being very, very hard to kill. You'll get a huge amount of net worth, and basically you just look around the map for places to go while you're doing this. And that's the great thing about playing this hero and doing this rotation, is that you don't even need to do some smoke rotation to move out of that farming pattern. All you need to do is wait for something to happen, wait for an opportunity to present itself. You TP in, you take the fight, and then you get an objective, and then resume that rotation. So they take,
or even you TP in, you see the fight isn't as good as you thought it was, you spawn treants, you send them to cut the wave, and you just get out.
Exactly.
They're not going to do anything with the fight because the wave's pushing in. What are they going to take with that?
Yep, exactly. That's actually a really important concept, by the way, too. The idea of, I was going to make a video on this recently, because this is something that I've seen a lot in like scrims and practice and stuff, but the idea of taking a shitty situation and not making it shittier is like really, really important. Like, this situation seems kind of shitty for Pain. I get it. They're trying to fight Roche. They don't want to just, I mean, it's not like VP can take it that easily, but they have an Ursa, so they want to like force the Roche, and Undying buys back, Nature's Prophet goes in, and it's kind of like a small little example of that. It's not that bad. It could be a lot worse, but in games, and especially in pubs, there's a lot of people that will commit because you want to like make up for somebody else's mistake. So what you were saying, like just going to a gank, making a rotation, realizing it's terrible, and then sending treants down the lane, that's actually like what Admiral Bulldog would do if the situation is no longer good. And what a shitty player would do is they would make the situation worse by TPing in and dying. And it's not easy. It's not easy to TP in. Like you can see, he TP'd in here, but he's in a very dangerous location. Talvo's obviously pretty good at Nature's Prophet, so he knows to just go back. He's doing the exact thing we just talked about, which is taking a shitty situation and not making it any worse. But a shittier player might actually run in and go get themselves killed or be out of position because like there's just so much chaos and they get kind of confused by the scenario and they don't pay as much attention to their positioning, and then all of a sudden it's a shitty situation that has been made 10 times worse. But he's remedying the situation that just occurred by taking space on the other side of the map, by going and getting that bounty. And he could have spawned treants to push bot, but he actually had a really good call there. The Tiny was right on top of him, so that was just a sick rotation. But basically he took a situation that was terrible for his team and he made it better by just doing something elsewhere. And a lot of the time you can lose games by just feeling like since your like Ursa went in and died or something, you need to get something from it because otherwise his death is in vain. But in reality, a lot of the time you need to just be like, okay, that guy's a fucking idiot. He shouldn't have died there. Like,
I think I have a perfect name for your video on that.
Oh yeah? What's that?
Dota 2 is not saving Private Ryan.
that is a good one. Did you see the Play Dota like Batman video that Donnie made recently?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my god, dude, the meme titles are actually awesome. Dota 2 is not saving Private Ryan. It really isn't. It's so bad. If you watch a pro game, like, I mean, we're literally doing it right now, and we can see so many mistakes being made by both teams. I mean, Solo just got literally solo picked off, pun intended, and it's like that's something that could have been made so much worse by a bad Storm Spirit zipping in and trying to save him. Oh, I don't want my Chen. People are good when it comes to supports. Like, a lot of the time people will ditch supports because it's like, oh, they're just a support. But
this guy stole my CS at like minute 2. I'm not saving his ass.
Exactly. That's that's so easy to ditch those people. But a lot of the time you should actually be ditching anti-mages and alchemists and these really important heroes. If they make a mistake, you don't want to try to remedy this. You had a plan, right? Most of the time when you try to take a fight, even if you don't communicate it to your team, if you TP on someone as Nature's Prophet, if you are telling your team to fight because you have a black hole or something like that, there's always like a plan. People kind of understand, okay, we're going to push this objective, we're going to fight because we're stronger, because we can do this, because we can do that. But the moment that plan has a monkey wrench thrown into it, you don't know what the outcome is going to be anymore because you haven't done those calculations. So basically anytime somebody makes a mistake, even if it's like an anti-mage or an alchemist or one of these heroes you don't want to die, it's actually most of the time better to just say fuck them and not try to save them, because a lot of the time the outcome of trying to go into a scenario and remedy it after one of those heroes has died will result in you just losing so much more than if you just had lost them. Like, sometimes you just have to take the loss, essentially, not try to fucking save Private Ryan, you know? It's a solid movie. But anyway, that's like a really important concept. I'm sorry for rambling, but it's like when you touch on these concepts, like, I feel like I have to talk about it because it goes so deep, you know? Like, even at the tier 1 level, you see people making mistakes like that, where you will have like an alchemist that goes in and you want to save them, and that's a much different situation than ditching a support, you know? So tier 1 players will make that mistake, but lower rated players might make the mistake of trying to save a support or a Nature's Prophet because it's a less difficult situation to deal with, but it's still kind of a difficult one for that skill level, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas like with a tier 1 pro, they'll be like, oh, I know to ditch this guy because he's not important. But when it comes to like an alchemist, they might make a mistake there because that's a really important hero, and it overrides the principles that they already know and makes them do something stupid. Their brain essentially turns off. That's like one of the worst things in Dota is there are these situations that arise that you haven't calculated that make your brain turn off and you just kind of act randomly, and those are the situations where you really fucking throw. And those are the situations that you want to avoid by like trying to calculate everything. And
also, I hate to interrupt, but I'm noticing
no
really good behavior here. He's not showing his hero, and he has a TP scroll, so that means it's really scary for VP to take that fight.
Right, exactly. So this is like a super important concept as well. I'm sorry for rambling on. Feel free to interrupt me, by the way, because this is what I do. I kind of ramble and then I cut it down and make videos out of it. But this is a really important concept that he is pushing in the lane with treants, and like you said, he's not showing, so they don't know if he's already TP'd in to try to fight or if he's setting up on the Wind Ranger. So there's that effect of being very scared on the map for VP, exactly like you said. That's really, really important. But something else is that if they think that he's still up here, he's not standing in the trees right here, because he's already done the job. He's pushed the lane in. This goes back, it's very similar to this rotation that we were talking about here. He pushed the lane in, and that is his job done. He's pressured this tower, which forces somebody to show themselves, which is the Storm, which allows his team to make a play, which it looks like they're literally about to smoke. He's got a smoke of deceit. This is because of him. He's winning the game right now. He's allowing his team to go for the smoke by doing this. But he's not going to present himself in a situation where he could actually be the one that dies when his team makes a smoke. So instead of going up here and being greedy, he runs as absolutely far the fuck away as possible while not showing, exactly like you said. So there's a bunch of things happening here, but then also this is Lumden calls this woodsmaning. You have to be a woodsman in Dota. You basically want to, like, if you see Arteezy as Spectre, like cutting through trees and stuff, and you know how like in TI, like he was Spectre, he was like up here or something, he would cut through trees and the enemy team was looking for him and they almost found him and the audience was like freaking out. It kind of seems like that's a situation he was only doing because he was pressured and because it's TI, but it's actually not. That's actually a fully calculated play, and Lumden calls it woodsmaning, which is a hilarious term. But basically what you do is you want to do your job and then be in a position to keep doing your job if the enemy team exits the area. But you want to be as far away from what would be an easy gank as possible, so that way if they do kill him up here, it's a huge investment and not worth it. Because imagine how much time it would take them to search all of this area and find him here. His team could get so much done on the map. So instead of going up here, which may be a shitty Nature's Prophet would, he actually runs all the way over here. And that's why you see Arteezy, he'll cut trees on Spectre, and he'll cut the creep wave here and split push, and then he'll friggin' woodsman himself all the way up here into this corner. And the reason for that is because he's trying to make it so that it's the least worth their time to come and try to kill him, and they have to invest a lot of time in doing it. So there's that two kind of factor thing occurring here, where he's doing that, he's making it not worth it to gank him, he's doing his job, which is pushing this lane and forcing rotations, and then exactly like you said, he's not showing intentionally because he knows that that effect is going to be there where the enemy team is scared, and if he shows, well, he's got a fucking Orchid, right? Like, he's scary. Like, he doesn't want to show because he wants people to be scared of him, and that gives his team more farm, especially because he's got an Ursa anti-mage. So there's just, like, a lot of stuff going on here, and Tavo's actually, this is, like, the best part of Tavo's play, I think, is his split pushing, which makes sense why he's so good at Nature's Prophet. As you can see, he's literally splitting the treants, so they're a pain in the ass to kill for the Storm, which is hilarious. Holy shit, what a clown. But it's like the Storm's actually struggling to kill all of his trees because he's splitting them up. God damn, this guy's good at Nature's.
There's something ironic about him pulling a little scorched earth policy on a Russian team.
Scorched earth policy? What's that?
Yeah, the Russians in the Napoleonic Wars would salt the earth and like burn it down behind them so that the Napoleonic armies couldn't get any food from the territory.
Oh, that's dope.
They were
dude,
taking.
that's smart. That's smart, dude. Scorched earth. So that's where that comes from. Nice, dude. This is like a history lesson for me. Good shit. Yeah, no, that's actually a very important concept in Dota 2. Damn, dude, that would make a good title for a video, actually. Although I don't know if anybody would know anything about the Napoleonic War. I know I don't. But yeah, that's a really cool concept. Like that's actually, when it goes back to this like rotation here that we talked about, that's the idea, is that if the enemy team pushes up here, when he's farming this camp and then these two camps, when they do come into the woods to farm it, it'll already be gone and he's farming over here. So like it's actually the same. It's the same thing. And I mean, it makes sense that Dota's, you know, mirrors what people have done in war, because it's competitive. It's literally like resources and managing resources and killing each other and stuff, which is war. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So he heads to the bot lane. He has a Shadow Blade now, so I think he feels a lot safer with this. Although one thing I would criticize with his play is that he showed on the creep wave, so he showed that he had the Shadow Blade without actually utilizing it first.
Maybe he was asserting dominance.
Hey, maybe.
But no, it was probably a misplay. I see what you mean.
Yeah, it's sometimes there's like there's the benefit of the doubt that you can give players, and a lot of the time you'll actually be right, because I mean Tavo's like fucking really good. But I think definitely in like a pressured situation like this, he's going to be making some mistakes. There's also a few. I think Pain is like more of a tier 1.5 team, so they'll actually make a lot of mistakes. They're really really skilled, but they're not like VP where they will strategically make so few mistakes, or like LGD, which is on an even higher level where there's so few strategical mistakes like that. So I would definitely say that one's probably a mistake, but who knows. There's a lot of the time when you have all this pressure on you too that you just kind of nervously like walk up to the wave and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Oops.
It seems to me that Pain Gaming's playing a lot like a skilled but newer team that's just not polished. Kind of like Windstrike is in the same position, I think.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that too. Like I think there's a lot of principles that they need to learn, but they have a lot of potential. They clearly have a lot of potential. Like their players know a lot of principles that like tier 2 players don't already, and they without having actually been tier 1 before, they know these, so they're just really fucking good players. But as you can see, this is one of those situations where you TP in as Nature's Prophet and you make like a bad situation worse.
I would almost send those Treants straight down to the tower to cut the creep wave.
Yeah,
rather than move them in like this. I don't see what they're gonna do here.
They don't do much damage, yeah. But this is probably, like we talked about, like a pressured situation where he's kind of panicking a little bit. Like I said, when you're in Dota and like you have these calculations and the calculations don't go as planned, a lot of the time your brain just kind of turns off and you become an idiot.
Especially when they go wrong in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, like... it becomes total chaos. Like you just can't handle it. It's just too complicated of a game. That's all. Like that's how it works. So I think you're totally right. I think cutting the wave would be the ideal scenario, because then if they do kill, they can't push an objective. Although that actually went really well because of Anti-Mage. Jesus, look, he has no Battle Fury. That's insane. Oh, it was this game. Okay, this is an interesting play. So he's sniping the courier with the Shadow Blade. With the TP scroll, of course. That's important too on Nature's Prophet, by the way. Like, always holding a TP scroll. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I do that. Oh,
that is, that right there is literally a perfect example of how you can't make a second of mistake. Like, you have so little time to make mistakes against tier 1 teams. Like, they will punish you for making the slightest mistake. That in my opinion is like a perfect example. Because in a pub, would you ever think that he would die there in a pub? Like, nobody's gonna be expecting that shit. Nobody's gonna die to that in a pub. But against,
I would expect that like the next bounty runes would spawn, and then Storm would ball in that spot to go for him, right? Like,
yeah, like it would happen, but later, basically, like much later. But like no one is just so quick, that he predicted it. And that was insane. That's so unfortunate if you're Tavo, because like 90% of the time you don't die there. It's just they're playing against VP, so they're so fast. Another thing that I would definitely criticize him of doing here is that he's TPing in with his hero and showing his hero. So while I get it, his team is in the area, so he feels safe. He is actually one thing.
He is playing opposite to the way that Seb won that game at TI with Axe right now.
Yeah,
by showing his hero there.
He definitely is. I think what he was doing is he was essentially presenting himself as a bait. But even if he does that and his team fights, like, they're already doing the job that they want to, which is to smoke down here to this objective, take the objective, and maybe take a fight. I mean, they killed a Chen. That's not even important at all. What's important is the objective, the fact that they made this rotation. So, okay, so he's setting up on this Tiny. He needs way more people because it... Yeah. So looking for the gank. But essentially...
Rather than that TP bottom, because his team was in position, I would almost say it would make more sense to TP top where that ward is and cut the wave there, and then just TP out with the TP scroll. Would have been...
If he could have his TP up for the time that his team takes a fight, I would say yes. But then also somebody did need to push out the bottom lane. So I do feel like... I do feel like it was the point of that objective. So here's a positioning error on his part. He didn't have the information that the Tiny was somewhere else. He knew the Tiny was still top. He farmed in a safe place, but because this is VP, it's not safe enough. So Tiny punishes it. So against a tier 2 team, that what just happened would probably work, where he's farming very safely on the high ground. But against VP, it doesn't. But basically, I think what should have happened in this scenario is I think it was right that he TP'd in. Because somebody needed to push the wave and his whole team was smoked. So I think, and the reason for that is because the idea of going down here was to take the objective and to position on the map. If the enemy team fights them, that's good because they'll win they'll win the fight. So that's a little bit extra that they get from it. But that doesn't really matter. Kills don't matter at all in Dota. What matters is pushing the creeps into the tower. The reason that I think that it's bad that he showed here is the same reason that I think it's bad that he was standing right here. Because if he shows there and he baits successfully, he just fucking dies, and then the same thing happens, but he's dead, right? So there's really no point. Like, usually if you play a game of Dota, this is something we've been talking about recently on my team. Usually if you play a game of Dota correctly, you don't even need to try to bait. The baits will occur because the enemy team has to make mistakes in order to get to you because you're playing well. And if you
it's the same idea as in chess. There's the idea of the forced move.
I'm not familiar with that either. You're cultured, man. You know all these smart people things. I feel so stupid. You need to explain this one to me.
It's where
chess and Napoleonic War and quantum computers.
You position your board such that an enemy basically has to take a piece because it's such a good move, but you're obviously prepared there to punish them for that. So they're forced to make this move that's terrible because you played so well.
Exactly. That's 100% how it is. Like, real baits in Dota don't actually exist. That's one thing that we've discovered as a team lately, is that, like, if you're playing well enough, it'll look like things are baits. Like, for instance, when he was standing, there's a crazy fight, but when he was standing in the tree's top, really, really far away, up to the left of the map that we talked about, that was technically a bait, because he would, if they went to kill him, they would waste so much time that it would turn out to be a bait. But he doesn't need to try to bait them. That's why I think the TP bot was bad, because he didn't need to bait there. If he was just playing well, the bait would be he's in the trees, and they're going to get the job done anyway, and then he doesn't even risk dying, and if he does die, they'll get way more out of it than just exactly what would have occurred anyway. So that's the mistake, is that you don't really need to bait in Dota. You just need to play well, and then baits will naturally occur, because the enemy team has no choice but to take a shitty fight because you're playing well. So I think it was really risky that he TP'd bot, and it's the same reason he died by the shrine, because it's like he's slightly out of position where a good team will punish. So this is some interesting. Honestly, these like Roche fights have been totally fucking them over. They've been like committing way too much to these Roche fights, like panicking and losing way more than they should. Anti-Mage is almost keeping them in this game though. So let's see what are the last hits like. Yeah, Tavo's got a lot of them. And it doesn't seem like he's been farming all that much, but he's got a shitload. That's how it goes, though.
Discount Broodmother.
Basically, yeah, basically. Although he can TP globally, that's pretty legit. But he is kind of a discount Broodmother. If they give Treants more damage ever, he will be like a full-on Broodmother. Maybe farm Ancients and shit. Go mid, farm Ancients or something like that, but... At this point, it feels really hard to play a Nature's Prophet because the enemy team is winning, and this is what I kind of talked about, where this is a supplemental hero, and like you will just supplement your team to do what they're doing better. But since his team is losing, he just feels so fucking useless, and basically all you can do at this point is split push.
Yeah, it seems to me that if you show in a team fight and your team isn't stronger than the other team, you're so squishy that you just pop.
You just instantly die. Correct. Yeah. Correct. And in those scenarios, you should honestly really consider just split pushing more and forcing the enemy team around the map, and then taking fights that will make you stronger by virtue of them not all being at the fight. That's probably how you would want to play it. So it's just a matter of like realizing that scenario is the one that you're in, and then kind of acknowledging it.
Or even like, what if he first of all wasn't positioned so far forward against a Storm Spirit Tiny?
Yeah, that's
and had cut the wave behind them or something, right?
Yeah, that's definitely a solid play. I think if this is a pub, he probably does, but because this is such a pressured situation, he's like kind of freaking out, and it's the brain turning off scenario again. And you see this at all levels of Dota, where people just don't really know how to react, what to do, because they didn't calculate for it. But in a pub, you can make those calculations on the fly, even if shitty things happen, because you don't really care that much. And I definitely think you're right. Like, TPing behind and just doing anything that he can other than just dying is for sure the play. But at this point, it's like it's a really hard game to win.
Maybe one of the things going on here is, in a pub, if you have to make a decision on the fly, that's like whatever, because you kind of go in expecting it, and like you never have a calculation going in. But when you've done all of these scrims and all of this preparation and all of this theory crafting, when something goes off the rails, it's so unexpected that the difference between being in all of this high information area and suddenly being in a low information area is just too shocking.
I would definitely agree with that. I would 100% agree with that. Especially when you're against like a really, really good team, and it's like, okay, well, it's not just a pub where I can just figure something out. You honestly probably could, because it's just Dota when it comes down to it. But still, it is like you said, it's a shock. The distance that you fall proverbially in terms of the information is too far, that you just freak the fuck out. And he's just kind of standing in trees with his team and not really knowing what to do now. So, yeah, I think this. So how long? Does
I think this is not over, but I think this is very.
At this point, the game becomes like, well, if VP fucks up a bunch, this will become like late game. So he buys a meteor hammer. So he eventually does make a decision to like just go split push, which I can respect that. But yeah, unless VP really fucks this up and it goes like hyper late game where the decisions basically just matter who can kill the other person without buyback and then go throne. But this isn't like late enough for that to be the scenario. So technically in this game, all VP needs to do is secure the Roshan, run to the high ground because they have an advantage, take any fight, and then probably win.
Yeah.
Because this isn't late enough for it to be... And they don't have the heroes to like just go down a lane and take the throne if they kill without buyback. They don't have like specters or PLs or anything like that. Anti-Mage really isn't a late game hero. He kind of is against Storm, but he's more of like a farms faster than you and wins the game because he has an advantage.
For me, it feels like Anti-Mage doesn't hit the late game hard. He just hits it fast, really.
Exactly. That's a really good way of putting it, actually. Is 100% that. So yeah, they literally did just that. They take Roshan, they go high ground, and then it's... Did they even take Roshan? Oh, it doesn't look like it. Or did they? It doesn't matter. They have such a gold lead that it doesn't really matter. Anti-Mage can't do shit. In a sort of game like this, I'd probably spend a lot more time on Nature's Prophet split pushing, but these are the games where it's just really sad and you're like, oh my god, I'm never picking Nature's Prophet again. But it has nothing, it has, well, I mean, it has a little to do with the hero, but it's like, he's not like a Spectre or PL where you'll just win the late game when you're losing. In fact, he feels really useless if you're losing. But he's really, really strong at like gaining an advantage in the early game and then cementing it so that you don't really get to this point, like an Enchantress as well,
or like a core Visage, actually.
Yeah, definitely similar to both of those heroes. If those heroes fall off, they feel so fucking terrible because they're supposed to be tanky and sit in a lane and make space, but they can't do that if you can kill them a couple of times because
they're balanced around being very strong early and having these strong power spikes. So it would just be stupid if they also scaled as well as like a Spectre or something.
Yeah, where you can basically just get to the late game and you win because you have a Spectre. Imagine if that was Visage or Nature's Prophet, who has like some of the best laning in the game and global TP. That would just be insane.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was interesting. We talked about like a lot of principles. I think those definitely matter a lot. We can go over your replay quickly if you want. I saw you had a Nature's Prophet game recently, and just like because I think like, well, obviously a very good way to learn a lot of stuff is to take a look at the pro replays, even though he made a few mistakes in there that we talked about, and then look at yours and just see what the differences are, and make up for... Oh damn, it's not that sucks. It's not downloading because it's older. Do you happen to have any Nature's Prophet replays downloaded that you could send me? Because you can like send the replay files.
Yeah. Give me 1 second here. Ooh, geez, I might not.
Okay, well that's...
Because I got into this, I was thinking, you know, I'm going to learn Nature's Prophet. That happened right before TI, and then, like, TI happened, and that's a pretty busy time. All the plans go down the drain.
Yeah. That's fine, that's fine. I think, definitely play some Nature's Prophet and try to... I think if you do that farming pattern that we talked about, you'll find games feeling very easy, and then also... playing in like the split push game to force the enemy team to essentially be baited by you if they do go for you by like playing really far away and pushing with the treants and stuff. I think that sort of stuff is like ultra game winning if you can.
Forcing moves.
Yeah, forcing moves, exactly. And then yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that I can say for sure will help, just because I know that in the last couple of weeks it's stuff that I've worked on, and holy shit, it's been like tremendous. Like games have felt so much easier. Actually, just recently I just played a game, and I've been practicing a lot of these techniques for staying really safe on the map, and for just doing your job and pushing a lane in and then waiting for the enemy team to like reveal information. And then I realized at the end of this game that I just played, I was like, oh man, I have 0 deaths. I didn't even realize that. 0 deaths. And it felt really good, because I think like a week or two ago I probably would have died a couple of times in this game, because I wouldn't have been thinking about, okay, I've already done my job, now I'm going to go do this rotation on this hard camp and wait for the enemy team to reveal information. If they reveal information, sure, I lost a couple of CS in the lane because I wasn't greedily pushing, but I know that I'm not going to die. So it's like...
And also, if they don't reveal information, in a way, they're still kind of revealing information, because
yeah,
obviously
exactly.
nothing's happening in the lane, so they have to be somewhere else.
100%. Like Dota, in Dota, like lack of vision in a specific area and vision in another area that is showing you nothing can actually tell you exactly what's in the lack of vision area, which is like super duper important. Obviously, I think Natris is a good hero to learn, by the way. This hero has been coming in and out of the meta for like literally 7 years or something. He's never been bad, and he wasn't in TI8. He wasn't exactly like broken or anything. So I think soon he's going to hit that period where he's really cancer and everybody hates him, which is a really good time to like win MMR with this hero. So I think you're like solid trying to learn this hero. Learning something like an Enchantress or something wouldn't be super valuable right now, because God knows these heroes are not going to be in the limelight for too much longer. Or Spectre. The patch today kind of hit these heroes pretty hard too. Okay, so
yeah. Thank you very much for the coaching session. How do you want to handle payment?
We just do PayPal. It's weird to have this in the video. I feel so awkward talking about paying for freaking video game shit, man. But it's like, it's the life, man.
Bills are bills.
Bills,
right?
Bills are bills. Yeah. So if you want to do like play Nature's Prophet games and just do some of the stuff that we talked about, even if you don't want to like do coaching or anything, if you just message me, I'm always down to talk about it.
Okay. Yeah.
It's just that the coaching actually, like, we have to like sit down and stuff, but I can like 100%. We can just like talk about stuff, and if you like link me replays and stuff, I can look at the matches and shit. But I think you'll definitely see some improvement if you focus on like those specific principles, just because that's like Offlane in a nutshell right now.
Yeah. Like the big thing I got from this was farming patterns, avoiding showing with your main hero in vision, and striking fear into their hearts by not being seen, because what you don't see is often a lot scarier than
yeah. Maybe that's not like that important on Nature's Prophet, just because he's like a kind of a squishy little bitch hero, so people aren't that scared all the time. But it definitely still is something. Like, you always want to be thinking about these things if you can. One thing I would recommend, by the way, is like focusing on one thing at a time in your pubs, because I kind of overwhelmed you with like a bunch of shit that I've learned in the past 2 weeks. But when I was learning it and implementing it in my games, I wasn't doing it all at once, because
you were doing it game by game.
Game by game, exactly. Like, that's not a way to see improvement, is to do all of it at once. You have to actually improve on the individual things. So I would definitely recommend that, and you'll definitely see some growth, just because a lot of people don't even have anything that they're looking to learn when they go into pubs. Like, they don't have anything they want to pay attention to. They just kind of play on a hamster wheel, and
they kind of pay attention to CS that their support has forced them to miss.
Yeah, exactly. And then letting the supports die later in the game as like a passive aggressive, or aggressive, I guess. Death is pretty aggressive way of getting back at them. So anyway, thank you. I do appreciate it. This was good. This is like it helps me like cement ideas and stuff too, and come up with ideas for like content and shit. So it's super helpful. So I really appreciate it.
The easiest way to learn something is to explain it to somebody else.
Exactly. Even if it makes you feel like an idiot while you're trying to explain it, you're like, oh, wait a minute. But it's still
called the Socratic method, I believe.
There you go. I know that one. I'm not that uncultured and uneducated. I know what the Socratic method is. Jesus Christ. Anyway, thanks a lot, man.
I'm going to send you a picture of a teapot and tell you this is a teapot.
Oh my God. All right. See you later,
Anyway,
man.
thank you very much.
No
It's
problem.
been a good session. I'm gonna